The gunshot shattered the evening like thunder through crystal. Aurelius Restaurant, the crown jewel of Manhattan's Upper East Side, erupted into chaos. Patrons in designer gowns dove beneath tables draped in Italian linen. Waiters in pristine white jackets scattered like startled birds. The air filled with screams, the crash of overturned chairs, and the acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with spilled champagne. But in the corner of the room, one man did not move. Brennan Mercer sat perfectly still, his weathered hands flat on the tablecloth, his breathing slow and controlled. While everyone around him surrendered to panic, he simply shifted his chair, a movement so subtle it might have been invisible, positioning his body between the gunman and the small figure pressed against his back. 7-year-old Wren Mercer clutched her father's flannel shirt with trembling fingers, her yellow dress now wrinkled beneath the table's edge. She did not cry. She did not scream. She had learned long ago that when her father went quiet like this, when his shoulders squared and his jaw set like granite, she needed only to trust him. 3 hours earlier, their evening had begun so differently. The apartment in Queens was small but filled with love. Brennan hunched over his workbench, calloused fingers manipulating the delicate gears of an antique pocket watch. Silver had begun to appear at his temples, and at 36, the lines around his eyes spoke of battles both foreign and domestic. The watch had belonged to his grandfather, then his father, and tonight it would become Wren's birthday present. He could not afford the telescope she wanted, the one that would let her see the Horsehead Nebula where she believed her mother now lived. But this watch, with its inscription, "Time is measured in moments that matter," carried something more valuable than any store-bought gift. On the kitchen counter, a worn leather notebook lay open to his monthly budget. The columns told a familiar story of struggle: rent, utilities, groceries, school supplies, and the medical bills that kept coming 5 years after Alara's death. He had stopped counting how much he still owed for treatments that could not save her. At the bottom of the page, circled in red, Wren's birthday dinner, $250. 3 months of skipped lunches, extra shifts at Wilson's garage, walking instead of taking the subway. All so his little girl could feel like a princess for one night. A memory surfaced unbidden. Alara in her hospital bed, skin translucent, fingers gripping his with surprising strength. "Promise me," she had whispered, her voice barely audible above the beeping monitors. "Promise you will teach Wren that love matters more than anything. More than success, more than money, more than being right." He had nodded, throat too tight for words, and held her until her final breath. Now, 5 years later, he still kept that promise every single day. "Daddy?" Wren appeared in the doorway, her brown curls tied with a ribbon that had seen better days, her eyes bright with anticipation. She wore the yellow dress from Target, not the designer gown she had seen in a magazine, but beautiful nonetheless because she had chosen it herself. "Do I look like a princess?" Brennan turned and his heart clenched at the sight of her. She had Alara's eyes, that same spark of curiosity and wonder that had first drawn him to her mother across a crowded university library 12 years ago. "You look like the most beautiful princess in all the kingdoms," he said, kneeling to her level. Wren pointed to the framed photograph on the wall. Alara in her lab coat, smiling at the camera with that mischievous grin that still visited Brennan's dreams. "I wish Mommy could see me." "She can see you, sweetheart." Brennan smoothed a strand of hair from her face. "From the Horsehead Nebula. Remember? That is where she watches over us." Wren nodded solemnly. "Do you think she will like the restaurant?" "I think she will love it, almost as much as she loves you." Across Manhattan, in a penthouse that overlooked Central Park, Victoria Ashford stood alone among her expensive possessions. At 32, she had built an empire. Ashford Industries dominated the healthcare sector, and her face graced the covers of business magazines with headlines praising her ruthless efficiency. Her designer dress was flawlessly tailored, her diamond earrings worth more than most people earned in a year. But tonight, on her birthday, her phone remained silent. No personal messages, no calls from friends, only business notifications and one text that had turned her blood cold. From Raymond Prescott, "Happy birthday. Hope this is your last year in that CEO chair." She deleted it without responding, but her hands trembled slightly as she set down the phone. Earlier that day, she had sat at the head of her polished conference table, reviewing quarterly projections while representatives from the Children's Cancer Research Fund waited hopefully for her answer. "While your work is commendable," she had said, her voice cool and measured, "Ashford Industries does not invest in projects without clear profit margins. Our shareholders expect returns, not charity cases." She had closed the folder without glancing at the children's faces on the cover. Now, alone in her penthouse, she caught sight of a photograph tucked away in the corner. 8-year-old Victoria in a science fair uniform, standing alone beside her project, two empty chairs where her scientist parents should have been. She had learned young that success required sacrifice, that vulnerability was weakness, that the only person she could rely on was herself. So why, on this birthday, like every other, did she feel so utterly hollow? Aurelius' restaurant glittered like a jewel box when Brennan and Wren arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The air smelled of truffle oil and old money. The maître d' looked them over with barely concealed disdain. The man in his worn flannel shirt, the little girl in her simple dress. "Do you have a reservation?" "Mercer, table for two." They were led to a corner table far from the windows and the restaurant's prominent guests. Brennan noticed but said nothing. He had learned long ago that his pride mattered less than his daughter's happiness. Wren did not notice the slight at all. Her eyes were too busy drinking in the wonder around her. "Daddy," she whispered, clutching his hand. "It is like a castle. Like in the fairy tales Mommy used to read me. Only the best for the birthday princess." Across the room, Victoria Ashford commanded attention without trying. She sat with her CFO and 3 board members, discussing the acquisition of a medical research company specializing in rare childhood diseases. "Once we strip the assets and eliminate the research division," her CFO explained, "quarterly profits should increase by 18%. Victoria nodded, satisfied, and reached for her wine. Her gaze drifted across the restaurant, briefly landing on the man in flannel and the little girl sharing a single appetizer. Something about them snagged her attention. The way his shoulders remained squared despite his obvious discomfort. The protective way he positioned himself between his daughter and the room. But it was his eyes that truly caught her. When he looked up and their gazes met across the crowded room, Victoria felt something shift in her chest. She saw loneliness there, a loneliness she recognized because she carried it herself. 2 strangers from different worlds, both bearing invisible wounds. The moment lasted only seconds before she looked away. Business waited for no one. Outside, 3 figures approached the restaurant's entrance. Garrison Callahan had once been decorated for valor. He had served his country with honor, survived 3 deployments, returned home to build a life with his wife and daughter. Then Ashford Industries acquired Meridian Corporation, where he had worked for 15 years. The restructuring that followed had cost him his job and his health insurance overnight. His daughter Nora had been 8 years old when the leukemia diagnosis came 18 months ago. A rare form, treatable with specialized care. Care that their insurance had covered until Victoria Ashford's company decided his family was no longer worth the investment. Nora died 3 months later, asking why the medicine had stopped working. "Ready?" Tyler Vance asked, hand on the door. Garrison pulled his mask into place. For Nora, the first gunshot punched through the ceiling, raining plaster down on screaming diners. The three men moved with practiced efficiency, Tyler covering the door, Pete Harmon sweeping toward the kitchen, Garrison advancing on the main dining room. Nobody moves. Nobody gets hurt. But Garrison's eyes were fixed on Victoria Ashford. He grabbed a waiter by the throat and threw him against the wall. Wallets, phones, jewelry in the bags. But he was not interested in robbery. This was about something far more personal. He moved toward Victoria's table, gun raised, and ripped off his mask. Victoria Ashford. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Just the woman I have been looking for. Victoria's expression remained carefully neutral, but her heart hammered against her ribs. I do not know you. No, you would not. Garrison laughed bitterly. We are just numbers on a spreadsheet to people like you. But maybe you remember my daughter, Nora Callahan. She was 8 years old when the leukemia took her, 18 months ago. Rare form, treatable with specialized care. She needed that treatment. Treatment our insurance covered until you restructured and cut our benefits. Understanding dawned in Victoria's eyes. She died 3 months later, Garrison continued, voice breaking, while you were probably buying another vacation home. From his corner, Brennan assessed the situation with cold precision. This was not a robbery, it was personal. The leader was emotional, unstable. The other two were following his lead, nervous energy evident in their movements. Desperate men made desperate choices. Garrison noticed the exchange of glances between Victoria and the man in flannel. He turned, moving toward Brennan's table, weapon swinging carelessly. Look at this. Working class tries to play dress-up for one night. He moved closer, cruel smile spreading across his face. How much did you save for this dinner? A month's salary? All so your kid could pretend she belongs here? Brennan did not react. His eyes remained fixed on a point past Garrison's shoulder, watching the other two gunmen in his peripheral vision, calculating distances, angles, potential weapons. Behind him, Wren whimpered softly. Garrison heard it and laughed, reaching toward the little girl. Maybe I am doing you a favor, kid, teaching you early that this world is not fair. People like you do not get happy endings. That was when everything changed. Brennan's voice cut through the chaos, low, steady, immovable as bedrock. Step back. 2 words. No plea, no threat. Just a simple statement of fact, like announcing that gravity exists. Garrison froze, confused by the complete absence of fear in the mechanic's voice. He had terrorized dozens of people tonight, watched grown men cry and powerful women beg. But this nobody in a flannel shirt was speaking to him like a misbehaving child. Something primal in Garrison's brain screamed danger. This man was not afraid. In a room full of terror, his calm was unnatural, wrong, like finding a lion where you expected a lamb. But pride won over instinct. Garrison could not back down, not in front of his crew, not in front of all these witnesses. He reached for Wren. Brennan's hands shot out faster than thought, gripping Garrison's wrist and twisting with surgical precision. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the restaurant. Before anyone could process what had happened, Brennan drove his knee into Garrison's solar plexus, dropping him to his knees. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. Tyler spun toward the commotion, weapon raised. Brennan was already moving, pulling Wren behind an overturned table. Heavy oak absorbed the first burst of gunfire, splinters exploding outward. The crowd erupted in fresh panic, but Brennan remained calm, counting shots, tracking positions by sound. Tyler advanced, trying to flank the table. Brennan grabbed a water pitcher, heavy crystal worth more than his monthly rent, and hurled it with sniper precision. It caught Tyler in the temple, sending him stumbling. In that moment of imbalance, Brennan closed the distance. A palm strike to the throat, an elbow to the ribs, a sweep that put Tyler on his back. The gun skittered away across polished marble. Pete Harmon panicked. He grabbed Victoria, arm wrapped around her throat, gun pressed to her temple. His hands shook violently, finger dancing on the trigger. "Stay back! Stay back, or I shoot!" Brennan rose slowly, hands visible but not raised. Blood trickled from a graze on his shoulder where a bullet had kissed flesh. His flannel shirt was torn, revealing scarred muscle beneath. Evidence of battles fought in places most Americans only saw on the news. He walked toward them, each step measured, deliberate. His voice was soft, almost hypnotic, not speaking to Pete, but to Victoria. "Breathe, relax your muscles. When I give the signal, go limp." Their eyes met across the chaos. Victoria saw no doubt in his gaze, no uncertainty, just absolute conviction. For reasons she could not explain, she trusted him completely. Her body went slack in Pete's arms, dead weight that threw off his balance. In that split-second adjustment, Brennan struck, hand sweeping up to direct the gun toward the ceiling as it fired, other hand finding Pete's carotid artery and applying precise pressure. The young man's eyes rolled back. He collapsed. Brennan caught Victoria before she hit the ground. For a heartbeat, they were frozen in an almost intimate embrace. The billionaire CEO and the single-father mechanic. Her expensive perfume mixed with his scent of motor oil and honest sweat. She could feel his heart beating against her chest, impossibly calm after everything that had just happened. Then Wren's voice broke the spell. "Daddy!" Brennan set Victoria gently on her feet and turned to his daughter, dropping to one knee to pull her into his arms. The little girl buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing. He stroked her hair, whispering that she was safe, that Daddy would always protect her. Wren looked up, tears streaming down her face, and saw Victoria standing alone a few feet away. The powerful CEO was trembling. Her perfect composure finally cracked. The 7-year-old pulled away from her father and walked to Victoria. She reached up and took the woman's hand in her small fingers. "Do not be scared," Wren said, her voice steady despite her tears. "My daddy is a superhero. He will protect you too." She paused, squeezing Victoria's hand. "My mommy too. She is in heaven. She protects everyone from the stars." Victoria Ashford, who had not cried in 20 years, felt her eyes burn with unexpected tears. When was the last time anyone had looked at her like this? Not as a CEO to fear, not as a competitor to defeat, but simply as a human being who needed comfort? Sirens wailed outside, growing closer. Police flooded through the doors. An officer approached Brennan with handcuffs, eyeing his torn clothing and bloodied shoulder with suspicion. "Sir, I need you to get on the ground." Victoria stepped between them, her voice carrying all its usual authority despite her disheveled appearance. "This man is a hero. He saved everyone in this restaurant, including me." She fixed the officer with a stare that had made corporate rivals crumble. "If you put those handcuffs on him, I will own your precinct by morning." The officer lowered the handcuffs. Later, as EMTs treated Brennan's wound, Victoria approached him. Through his torn shirt, she could see scars covering his chest and arms. Bullet wounds, blade marks, evidence of a life spent in service. "Who are you?" she asked directly. Brennan looked up from where Wren clung to his good arm. 7 years with the SEALs, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. His voice was matter-of-fact, devoid of pride. "I left when my wife got sick. Cancer. She died 5 years ago. Wren was only 2. He looked down at his daughter. "It is just the 2 of us now. Why did you risk your life for us? For me? You could have stayed hidden." Brennan's answer was simple. Because that is what separates humans from animals. Not money or power, the choice to stand when others cannot. He stroked Wren's hair. What kind of father would I be if I taught her to only care about herself? That night, Victoria could not sleep. In her penthouse, she pored over files her investigators had compiled on Brennan Mercer. Decorated veteran, honorably discharged, working as a mechanic to be home every night for his daughter, paying off medical bills for a wife who had been gone 5 years. Then she found the file on Laura Mercer. PhD in molecular biology from Johns Hopkins, specialized in experimental cancer treatments, worked at Meridian Laboratories from 2010 to 2017 under Victoria's mother. Victoria's blood ran cold as she read further. Ilara had been researching treatments for the exact type of cancer that eventually killed her. When she was diagnosed, she requested to continue her work, possibly as a trial patient. Victoria's mother had denied the request. The insurance company that later denied coverage for Ilara's experimental treatments, Highland Health, had been acquired by Ashford Industries 6 months after Victoria became CEO. There had been a review of denied claims. Ilara's case was flagged for potential reversal. Victoria had signed off on the board's decision to deny the appeal. She sat frozen at her desk, the implications sinking in like stones in deep water. Brennan Mercer had saved her life tonight without knowing that her family, her company, her own signature on a document she had never read, might have contributed to his wife's death. 1 week later, Victoria found Brennan at Wilson's Auto Repair. He stood beneath the hood of a pickup truck, hands black with grease, moving with the same efficient precision she had witnessed at the restaurant. When he saw her, his expression closed off. "Miss Ashford, I need to tell you something." Victoria took a deep breath. "Your wife was Ilara Lawson before she married you. She worked for my mother at Meridian Laboratories." Brennan straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ilara was researching treatments for the cancer that killed her," Victoria continued. "When she got sick, she asked to continue her work. My mother denied the request. She forced herself to meet his eyes. The insurance company that denied her coverage, Highland Health, my company acquired them. There was a review. Her case was flagged. I signed off on the decision to deny the appeal." Silence stretched between them. "So your family," Brennan said quietly, "your company had a hand in my wife's death. And now you are here for what? Confession? Absolution? I am here because you deserve the truth." The truth. A bitter smile touched his lips. "The truth is that people like you play God with people's lives every day. You decide who gets treatment, who lives, who dies, all based on profit margins." "I did not know about Ilara when it happened," Victoria's voice cracked. "I should have, but I signed off on policies without understanding their real-world impact. And that makes it better?" His voice remained controlled, but she could hear the fury beneath. "My wife died while the treatment that might have saved her sat on a shelf because your mother was worried about intellectual property. Wren grew up without her mother because some insurance company decided experimental treatments were not cost-effective." "Yes," Victoria said simply. "I was part of that system. I still am. That is why I am here." Before Brennan could respond, his phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. Garrison Callahan was released on bail. Someone paid $500,000. Victoria paled. "I know, FBI contacted me. Raymond Prescott, my company's biggest competitor, he orchestrated the whole thing. He has been manipulating people like Garrison for years, creating disgruntled employees to use as weapons against me. So Garrison was a pawn. We all were." Victoria met his gaze. "Prescott does not care who gets hurt. Your wife, Garrison's daughter, me. We are all just collateral damage in his corporate war." 3 weeks later, Victoria attended Wren's school art fair at the little girl's invitation. The gymnasium buzzed with parents and children admiring paintings and sculptures. Wren stood proudly beside her watercolor, A family portrait unlike any other. A tall man holding hands with a small girl, and above them, a woman with angel wings floating among stars and planets. The Guardians, the placard read. By Ren Mercer, age 7. That is my daddy, Ren explained to Victoria, pointing to the figures. And that is Mommy. She is an angel now, watching over us from the Horsehead Nebula. It is beautiful, Victoria said softly. Ren looked up at her with those wise eyes that saw too much for a 7-year-old. You know what, Miss Victoria? Real superheroes need someone to protect them, too. She glanced at her father across the room, then back at Victoria. Mommy protects Daddy from heaven. Maybe you could protect him here on Earth. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes for the second time in a month. Later, she found Brennan in the parking lot. He had just spoken with Garrison Callahan, who had appeared not to threaten, but to deliver a flash drive full of evidence. Every connection between Highland Health, Prescott Enterprises, and the systematic denial of care that had killed his daughter. He is turning himself in, Brennan said, taking responsibility for what he did. And the evidence. Enough to bring down Prescott, enough to change everything. Victoria hesitated, then spoke again. There is something else. I received word that your building is being converted to luxury condos. You are being evicted. Brennan's jaw tightened. News travels fast. Ashford Industries owns several residential buildings with staff apartments. Most are empty. She held up her hand before he could protest. Not charity, a business arrangement. Fair rent, good school district for Ren, no special treatment. The buildings need respectable tenants. I do not need... Ren needs stability, Victoria said quietly. And you need to stop punishing yourself for accepting help. Brennan was silent for a long moment, watching his daughter through the gymnasium window, still proudly showing her painting to anyone who would look. Standard lease terms, he said finally, and I pay security deposit and first month in full. Agreed. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The grand ballroom of Ashford Industries headquarters had never seen an event quite like this. Journalists, medical researchers, patient advocates, and board members filled every seat. Camera flashes erupted as Victoria took the stage. For too long, she began, our healthcare system has prioritized profits over patients. I know this because my own company has been part of the problem. A murmur ran through the audience. Today, I am proud to announce the establishment of the Alara Lawson Foundation for Medical Access. Victoria paused to steady her voice. This foundation will receive an initial endowment of $1 billion from Ashford Industries, with a commitment to $50 million annually for research, patient advocacy, and scholarships for children who have lost parents to treatable conditions. Shocked silence, then furious whispers. Raymond Prescott rose from his seat near the back, face flushed with anger. This is corporate suicide. The shareholders will never approve. As majority shareholder, I already have. Victoria's gaze hardened. And Mr. Prescott, given your company's documented involvement in manipulating Highland Health's claims process, evidence of which has been provided to federal investigators, I suggest you focus on your own legal defense. A man in an FBI windbreaker stepped forward from the side entrance. Raymond Prescott, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy, corporate espionage, and accessory to attempted kidnapping. The room erupted in chaos as agents moved toward Prescott. In the confusion, Garrison Callahan appeared in the doorway. Not to cause harm, but to witness. He held up a photograph of his daughter Nora. This was my little girl, he said, voice carrying across the now silent room. She deserved better. All of our children deserve better. Brennan stood and every eye turned to him. My wife Alara believed that science should serve people, not profits. His voice was steady, strong. She died while the treatment she was researching sat on a shelf because of patent concerns. I am here today because my daughter needs to see that good things can happen to good people. That kindness matters more than money. Garrison walked forward and extended his hand to Brennan. For Nora, he said. For Elara. For every child who deserved better. Brennan shook his hand. Two fathers who had lost everything, finding something neither expected, understanding. 1 year later, the rooftop garden at Sterling Residences flourished under the summer sun. Wren's strawberry plants had exceeded all expectations, producing plump red berries that she proudly harvested for her 8th birthday party. She knelt beside her garden plot, selecting the ripest specimens with careful concentration. Do you think we have enough, Daddy? Brennan smiled at his daughter, marveling at her resilience. In the year since they had moved to this apartment, Wren had blossomed. Her artwork covered their walls. She had made friends at her new school. The nightmares about bad men with guns had faded. I think that is plenty, sweetheart. The party that afternoon filled their apartment with laughter. Wren's classmates, neighbors from the building, Garrison and his son, Jason. They all gathered to celebrate. Victoria arrived carrying a professional-grade telescope, gift-wrapped with a silver bow. For stargazing, she explained as Wren tore off the paper. You mentioned wanting to see the Horsehead Nebula up close. Wren's eyes widened with wonder. Can we see where Mommy lives? We can try. Later, as Wren arranged her gifts, she looked up at Victoria with those knowing eyes. Miss Victoria, can I tell you a secret? Victoria knelt to her level. Of course. Last year I wished Daddy would not be sad anymore. Wren glanced at her father across the room, then back at Victoria. It came true. He smiles now. Real smiles, not pretend ones. And this year? Wren leaned close, whispering conspiratorially. I wished for a mom, not to replace my real mom. She is in the stars, and I love her forever. But maybe a mom for down here? Someone who makes Daddy smile like you do? Victoria's breath caught. I think, Wren continued solemnly, Mommy sent you to us. She is good at that, sending people where they need to be. That evening, after the guests had gone and Wren had fallen asleep clutching her new telescope manual, Brennan and Victoria sat on the balcony watching the city lights below. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything this year. The foundation, the apartment, the telescope. You did not have to do any of it. Yes, I did. Victoria turned to face him. Elara's research. The trial started last month. Early results are promising. The Lawson Protocol might actually save lives. She would have hated having it named after her. Brennan smiled sadly. She always said science was about the people it saved, not recognition. Then we will make sure it saves many people. Silence fell between them, comfortable now in a way it had not been a year ago. I have been thinking about what Wren said, he murmured, about her wish. Brennan, she asked me this morning if it was okay to love two moms. His voice was thick with emotion, one in the stars and one here. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. What did you tell her? I told her that hearts do not divide love. They multiply it. He turned to face her fully, cupping her face in his calloused hands. I told her that her mom in the stars would want nothing more than for us to be happy. And are you? Happy? Instead of answering, Brennan leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative. Two wounded souls learning to trust again. Then Victoria's arms wrapped around his neck, and his hands found her waist, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like a promise. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, a small voice came from the doorway. Does this mean my wish came true? They turned to see Wren standing there in her pajamas, telescope manual clutched to her chest, eyes wide with hope. Brennan opened his arm and Wren ran to them, squeezing between the two adults on the balcony chair. Victoria wrapped her arms around the little girl, and Brennan wrapped his arms around them both. Yeah, sweetheart, he said, pressing a kiss to his daughter's hair. I think it did. Wren looked up at Victoria. So can I call you Mom? Not instead of my star mom, just also. Victoria's tears spilled over as she nodded, unable to speak. Mom, Wren said, testing the word, then smiled brilliantly. I like it. I have two moms now. One who watches from the Horsehead Nebula and one who watches from right here. Above them, the stars continued their ancient patterns, indifferent to human concerns, yet somehow comforting in their constancy. Inside, Wren's new telescope stood by the window, pointed toward the heavens, toward the Horsehead Nebula where, in a child's understanding of heaven, Elara Mercer watched over them. Darkness does not destroy light, Brennan murmured, holding his family close. It only reveals it. And sometimes, Victoria finished softly, pressing a kiss to Wren's forehead. What is revealed is worth everything. There are no coincidences, Wren added sleepily, repeating words she had heard her father say. Just paths crossing when they are supposed to. Brennan smiled at Victoria over their daughter's head, a family formed from tragedy. Love found in the aftermath of loss. Two broken people and one wise little girl, proving that even the deepest wounds can heal when you let others in. The city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, among the swirling gases of the Horsehead Nebula, perhaps Elara Mercer smiled. Her path had crossed with theirs exactly when it needed to, guiding her family toward the light they deserved. Just love, finding its way home.